And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FTE off. Bring in FTE off. It's orange!
45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You bet. Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of SpaceX's 99th launch of 99th Falcon 9 launch of 2024, which is pretty crazy. I see all the 5x5s in chat. Thank you very much for that. I'll be your host for today's mission. I am Trevor Sesnick, a writer here with NSF. But thankfully, it will not be me alone tonight. Joining me will be Cody. Cody, welcome to the stream.
Hi, thank you. I'm super glad to be here and cover another Starlink launch. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, they're definitely exciting, but there are some cool things to talk about on tonight's mission. But I also want to introduce the people in the field. We have Mr. Max Evans starting off with. I'm not sure if he's on comms. And then we have D. D, welcome back to Florida.
Thank you. It is great to be back for another Falcon 9 launch of Starlink satellites. Great to be back from a fun trip in Texas.
Yeah, certainly a bit smaller of a rocket than you last saw launch, but an exciting launch nonetheless. And in the background, we have Carson operating today's stream, as well as Jay and Kevin are probably helping out as always. So make sure you thank all of those. But with that, if you guys have any questions, make sure you tag us in chat with the @NASASpaceflight, and we will try our best to answer them. But Cody, can you just give us a quick rundown of what they're launching today and anything cool you've noticed about the mission?
Gotcha. Yeah, I can totally do that. So we're going to be launching another group of Starlink V2 minis on booster. This is booster 1073. That's going to be launching here from the Cape. This is launching from pad 40. Let me just check. Yeah, visually yes, pad 40. Out of the Cape here. It's going to be launching in kind of a southeasterly trajectory. Downrange, we're going to have Doug on fairing recoveries, and we're going to have shortfall gravitas on booster recovery. As I was saying earlier, this has been booster 1073. This is a pretty storied booster. It's had a couple of missions besides Starlink's on it, so it's gone through the ringer with a couple of launches. It's mostly launched down here from the Cape, and yeah, so it's been doing a lot of missions down here. Luckily, we do not have a stubby nozzle on this one. I'm pretty glad about that one. Last launch I commentated, we unfortunately had to have the sight of the stubby nozzle. This is going to be going and landing down on a shortfall gravitas. I believe you said that earlier, but it's just sitting down, I believe, about 600 kilometers downrange for this launch.
You're really bringing in the stubby slander so early in the stream.
I have to say it.
Good. Jack is agreeing with us. Boo, stubby, boo in the back channel. Thank you, Jack. It's nice that D and Max aren't. I wish we had Jack on to help with the stubby slander, but as long as D and Max know that it should be booed, we're all good.
This is hate speech.
There's Max. That summoned him to talk. Oh, and there's Jack.
Bad.
Oh no.
All right, Jack just says bad. Anyway, thank you for that overview. So yeah, this booster is flying for its 18th time on today's launch. With a, I don't know, it's not a super fast turnaround. It's actually pretty slow, 71 days. Last flying on Starlink Group 10-7, which lifted off on August 12th. But with that, let's get to some of your guys' questions. As always, if you have any, make sure you tag us in chat. And let's start with one from David, who's wondering, how's the weather and downrange looking? D, can you kind of walk us through maybe why we suspect SpaceX may have delayed today's mission and how weather is looking?
So we don't have a ton of information on why they specifically delayed. Weather is all right. It's not perfect. There was a 30% probability of violation, mostly looking at liftoff winds and the cumulus cloud rule. There have been some winds around here, so that makes a bit of sense. And then the other thing is the booster recovery weather, which is low to moderate. I will say there are a couple clouds out here at the press site. The main thing in the sky right now is actually the mosquitoes, but that's all right. That will not affect the launch here today. If it were to have a 24-hour delay, that is a 85% go, only a 15% probability of violation. But those would be the same concerns, and that actually booster recovery weather would decrease. But hopefully that is not a concern today, and they will get off the ground here in a bit less than an hour.
Yeah, and they did actually shorten today's window a little bit. So it goes until 9:16 p.m. Eastern. So they only have about half an hour more that they can delay in the event that they decide to not go for this T0 that they are currently targeting. Yeah, and there's that on SpaceX's official website. Let's see. Going into some support real quick, I want to thank these people for going above and beyond with their support. As always, we just want to say thank you guys, especially who come out this early to help to come listen to us yap. It's awesome. We really appreciate you, and we appreciate y'all for just being here and liking the stream. There are people who go above and beyond, like 9-8 Central, who became a Red Team member. Welcome to the Red Team. And Wilbo Baggins, a regular supporter here, saying watch support repeats. I trust that you are going to do this based on previous streams, so thank you very much, Wilbo, and thanks for your continued support. And then Snock Garden with a $20 super chat saying Dream Team coverage tonight, 99 Falcons. Dang, actually it's 102 Falcons, 99 Falcon 9, so lots of nines in today's mission, which I don't know, is kind of cool. Anyway, back to some more questions. Let's see. Here's one for you, Cody, from Carlos, who's wondering, what does ASOG stand for?
So ASOG stands for a shortfall gravitas. I believe the name comes from a book. Do you know what book it's from? I believe it's a quote, but it was one of the more modern. It was the third drone ship that they made just after. Just read the instructions, and of course, I still love you. I remember the kind of rumors of it being constructed, and we didn't know if it was going to actually be made, and then. This one is now the workhorse out there at the Cape. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure what book. I know it. I know you're right. It is from some series or something. Oh gosh, Jack is in chat yelling at us, but I don't know. Jack is saying culture series. I have no idea.
I have no
But
idea
yeah,
what that is.
it's actually technically their fourth drone ship because right, they had just read the instructions 1, which they had for 2
Oh,
long
right.
and then and then of course I Still Love You, and then an updated Just Read the Instructions, and then now a shortfall of Gravitas.
You're right. Yes.
Okay, I'm being told in the back channel, Ian M. Bank Culture series is what it is from. So,
Nice.
awesome. Ethereal Swordsman is wondering, what are the 4 towers for? Wrong answers only. Cody, do you want to start by going over what the 4 towers actually are for in case people don't know, and then a wrong answer?
Sure, yeah. So these 4 towers around the launch site are used to kind of deflect lightning. Out here at the Cape, you have a lot of clouds, and it would be not a great idea to have lightning strike a giant vat of liquid rocket fuel, right? You don't want your rocket being struck by lightning. We saw that during Apollo 12. It actually they had to restart the flight control system because it got struck by lightning mid-flight. And I might have got the Apollo number wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 12. But they have these lightning towers around the launch site to make sure that if lightning does kind of roll through while the rocket is vertical, they'll likely strike the lightning towers rather than the giant rocket sitting there on the launch pad. And for wrong answers only, those are the 4 slingshots that fling the rocket up. That's where the rubber band's attached to. Yeah.
D, what is your wrong answer?
I mean, you just said it. That's part of the trampoline system to launch our payloads into orbit.
With the broomsticks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you,
That is
Trevor? What's your wrong answer?
Actually, I don't have a good one after those.
Okay.
I'll think about it. If I come up with one, I will get back to it. But good question, Ethereal Swordsman, and thank you for always sticking around. Let's see. Human is wondering, how long has it been since we've had a Group 6 launch? Let's see. I will. Starlink Group 6. The last Starlink Group 6 launch was Starlink Group 664, which is the 1st of June. So it's been, 4 months or so, a little over that. So it's been a long time. And at least I don't super understand why they're going back to these launches. I've completely lost track of what these group numbers mean. And I think Alex has too. So I really don't even know if the public knows at this point. Unless Alex corrects me in the back channels that there's an obvious reason, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember tracking the first couple numbers, and then eventually it was just like they've launched so many times that it's come to the point where I just can't keep up with all of it. There's just too many groups, too many numbers. What does the dash mean? It's just so much in there to track.
Yeah, because right now SpaceX is launching Group 6, Group 8, Group 9, Group 10. Let's see, are there any others that I'm missing? I think I think they're launching to like 4 or 5 groups right now, which is just too. Oh yeah, and Group 11. So yeah, we have no idea. Carson in the back channel speculating prob to get away from the weather down south of Florida, but could be wrong. Emphasis in bold. So yeah, we're not super sure. Anyway, here's a question for you, D. Oh, or actually not. We have a bit more exciting news. That is Flight 6 booster being prepared to go on to the Orbital Launch Mount.
We did speculate a little bit beforehand. It was like, is this going to happen right when they're trying to launch? Ooh.
Yeah, just a week, not even a week and a half since the last flight of Starship with the catch. They are already getting a booster on the Orbital Launch Mount 9 days after Flight 5.
It's so cool to see, and it's hard to understand the scale of these boosters and the Orbital Launch Mount and the tower out there until you go and see it. And even still, like, it looks massive, and then you see someone next to it, and it's even larger than you thought it was. So the fact that we are 9 days, you said, after they caught a booster and they're already lifting another one onto that pad. They've made so many improvements in the last year and a bit. Like, we all know after Flight 1 how the pad looked, and the fact that they're already getting another booster on this thing. They've made a lot of improvements in that time, and it's so cool to see.
I'd say it's also incredible they're using the same chopsticks. Like, there was so little damage that in a week they were able to use the same lifting mechanism to lift another booster onto the launch pad. And so their turnaround on that is just incredibly quick, despite it being an entirely new thing of having caught a booster. They were able to go through and look at it and be like, yeah, it's good, and we can lift another booster. It's crazy.
I know when I was there,
Yeah.
they were doing some coding on the base of the tower, and they were doing a little bit of work, but to my eyes, nothing. They weren't doing any sort of major changes. Of course, you'll get all those updates in the Starbase update and the dailies and all that, but it's really cool to see.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, so Flight 6, I guess the question that we know chat's going to be asking is when? So, D, with how well Flight 5 went, I mean, they basically met every single one of the goals that they set. When do you think Flight 6 is going to launch, and what do you think the mission profile is going to be?
I would expect it to be similar to Flight 5. I mean, they might have some really minor differences, of course. They like to improve, but I wouldn't. They got approval for, we know that it's a slightly different profile, but we don't know exactly what. And then as far as time frame, I would be surprised if it wasn't by the end of the year. And I would expect it to be soon. Do I hop in my car and drive that way? No, but I don't think it'll be long at all until we see Flight 6.
Do you think November is possible?
Yes.
That's exciting. That's at most a month and a half turnaround time between launches for a vehicle this big after only 5 flights. That's kind of, as Jack texted me, it's cuckoo bonky bananers.
Did he actually text you that specifically?
That is exactly what he texted me in all caps.
Wow. I have to agree that it is cuckoo, bonky, bananas, whatever that was. That
Bananers.
I'd have to agree as well that it is incredible that they're able to just not reuse, but they're able to turn around the pad that quick. I mean, it's incredible when we see this thing start to have an even faster launch cadence. That's going to be crazy.
Yeah, just for context, the fastest turnaround of OOP-A to date was actually between flights 3 and 4 at 83 days, 23 hours, and 25 minutes. So if they can get that down to, a month and a half, that's just at most, again, that's about half of the fastest turnaround time so far. So exciting. But with that, we should probably get back to today's launch that is going on, Starlink Group 661. And we are coming up on that T-minus 40-minute mark, which will, of course, means we're getting close to the start of fuel load, assuming they are go. Cody, can you walk us through when the go, no-go poll is for fuel load, and if they are go, what events we'll start seeing?
Yeah, so at about 38 minutes, we're going to hear from the launch director whether propellant is go for load or not load. And then that means that at around 35 minutes, we'll start seeing the loading begin, and we'll start seeing some frost and more venting. And so we'll see some signs of loading begin around then. And so, yeah, we'll start seeing more vapor and stuff coming from the tower. General frosting. At about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, we'll see a large vent, and that's when we really know we're in for it, in for a good launch, or when we start seeing them start to cool down those lines and frost the lines, getting those ready for that second stage LOX loading. Just making sure that the lines aren't going to flash freeze. Sorry, that's a mouthful. And break the lines. They want to chill those down so they have a large vent then, and that's when we know that there's a lot of fueling going on at that point.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll start seeing it get a bit cloudy and frosty on the vehicle here in a couple of minutes. Looks like there's a little bit of venting there. I can't quite tell if that's from the TE or the booster itself. Probably the TE. But again, none of this venting this far out has any meaning. It doesn't start having meaning until they get into that fuel load.
Yeah, it's always really exciting when we start to get to the 38-minute mark, when you get the go, no go from the launch director for propellant load. That's when, in my mind, when things really start to build up. And then, of course, like you said, the frost starts to form, and then that 20-minute vent is a great sign.
Yeah. No kidding. With that, D, there is a question in chat specifically for you from Top Banana 48. Maybe that's one of Jack's alts based on what he texted me. Saying, D, glad you didn't have to rush back to Florida. How was your extra time in Texas?
It was absolutely lovely. Thank you so much for that question. I had a great time hanging out with Max and Jack and Mary, and Dan was there as well. He left a little bit sooner than the rest of us, and Caesar, and such a great time. Just getting to hang out and see it. We got to see a booster rollback of a launched booster, which, that's so cool to see. And of note, it is T minus 37 minutes and 45 seconds. So that would be when the launch director would verify go for propellant load. So we'll have to keep an eye out to see about that. But yeah, I had such a great time in Texas. A little bit of a longer, more relaxed trip, although Max and I got out there and it was immediately in full work mode to get everything ready for launch. And it was just honestly a wild time, setting up cameras, working through all of that, and then preparing everything for the stream. And I was not expecting a launch and catch on that first day so successfully. And so we were just exhausted, and we got some rest after they caught that booster, which was really nice. Because they caught the booster, they had to safe it. They had all this stuff that they had to do. So we got an extra day of rest before we went, picked up our remote cameras, got a ton of other work done there. I am being reminded by Jack that he made me pancakes.
I was just about to ask how they were.
The pancakes were wonderful. There were one day he made pancakes with a little bit too much milk, and so they were very flat. But those were wonderful. And then we also had pancakes that he made that were properly mixed. And he also made bacon that he did not burn, I will add. I may or may not have burnt some bacon yesterday. But it is at the 35-minute, 50-second mark. So now we really have to keep an eye out on the booster, see if we can catch any venting coming up here.
Yeah, generally it's the race between us and SpaceX of whether we see frost form first, or we get the post from SpaceX saying they have started fuel load on for tonight's launch. But Like I mentioned earlier, there are additional backup opportunities today if they choose to not go to this in this window. There are opportunities available until 9:16 p.m. Eastern, which is about half an hour more room that they have. And then in the event that they do not go at all today, there are additional launch opportunities tomorrow, starting at 5:47 p.m. Eastern. And I believe the weather is just about as good tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually do want to correct. I was reading the previous launch mission execution forecast when I was talking earlier. So my numbers were ever so slightly off. Uh, in actuality, both today and tomorrow are a 20% chance of violation. And then booster recovery weather, while today it is low to moderate, tomorrow it would just be low. So weather does improve marginally if they have a 24-hour slip to tomorrow. Sorry about getting that wrong last time.
No, no worries. For all intents and purposes, it was the same. That said, while we wait for some signs of if fuel load has began, I want to cover some of your guys' support. Rick gifted 5 Red Team memberships, as did BK Snyder. If you got one of those, please make sure you thank them as always. It's really generous when people gift memberships so that you can experience the awesome stuff that our photographers and whatnot do in the field. Because like D and Max and Jack and Julia and Sawyer and all of the other photographers do very, very good work, and you get access to all of their work. So, um, Musical Wolves saying, when not your ordinary Starlink merch, propose it to Adrian. But I don't know if there are plans for that, but I don't know what's going on with the store. So. Then RC Horseman gifted 10 Red Team memberships, as did Bideford. Thank you very much for both of y'all. Very regulars on stream. And then Ethereal Swordsman with the super chat saying, Hybrid Stream, Starship, Stick Lift, and Falcon Self-Propelled Lift. They caught a booster. Also, good wrong answers. Have $5. Thank you, Ethereal Swordsman. And yes, they did catch a booster. And hopefully tonight we'll see a launch and chopsticks, but it looks like um, the booster at Starbase may start to have gone down a little bit. So maybe they saw something they don't super like and have stopped that. And then finally, B0 AWS is wondering how we are. I'm good. It's a cool day in space. How are you doing, Cody?
I'm doing pretty good. I got some stressful, class stuff going on. I got my electrical fundamentals midterm coming up, so I'm stressing a little bit on that. But otherwise, in the world of space and everything else, I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. And D, how are you doing, aside from mosquitoes?
Well, I would be better if we saw frost on this booster, to be entirely honest. I'm a little disconcerted that we do not.
Yeah, I am too. Because we should have expected to see venting by now, and frost in general, and I don't see any. And we also have not gotten that post from SpaceX about confirming tonight's mission. So it's possible that they have selected a different T0, whether that's today or, as I mentioned, tomorrow. While we continue to wait for official information, let's perhaps, can we bring up some of the Starbase's views, Carson? Check in what's happening to SpaceX's other rocket program? Maybe.
Perhaps.
There we go. Let's see. That definitely... Have they... Oh yeah, it is set.
Yeah, it looks a little bit
Is that
further
back on
down
its
than it was.
transport stand completely?
I
That would
can't
be a
quite
bummer if
see.
they. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, okay. From there, it looks like that is on the
Yeah.
transport stand. Um. So yeah, this may be looking like two aborted uh, lifts, if you will, today. Uh, Certainly looking like B-13 has been set back down, and definitely not looking good for Falcon launching in under half an hour. I would say we can confidently say that the 8:48 p.m. Eastern Time T0 is no more. But we will, of course, stay live with you until we have official confirmation. Meanwhile, we'll just take more of your guys' questions. Make sure you tag us in chat with the @NASASpaceflight if you have any questions. Um, let's see. Rory is wondering how are boosters transported to Vandenberg? Cody, how do they transport Falcon, and is it common for them to switch boosters between the coasts?
Yeah, we've seen it a couple times where they'll switch a booster between, the Cape and Vandenberg. I mean, a good one I saw recently was during Hera. They took a booster that had flown mostly down in Vandenberg and then brought it all the way over to the Cape to actually get that launch because it was expendable launch. They wanted to get that booster
Not
dealt
to
with.
Sorry, just to interrupt you real quick, Cody. We did get official confirmation from SpaceX now. They're targeting Wednesday, October 23rd for the launch. Liftoff is targeted for 5:47 tomorrow, with backup opportunities available until 9:23. So officially no Falcon launch today, unfortunately. But we'll continue hanging out for a bit and answering your questions. So with that, continue, Cody. Sorry, that was an important thing to talk about.
No, yeah, we gotta convey the information when we can. So all good. Yeah, we've seen them transport some boosters to and from the Vandenberg and the Cape, and primarily those are brought by semi truck. They'll put them on the back of a semi and they'll drive them across country. That's how they primarily transport a lot of their rockets. There's some very interesting ways that different agencies transport rockets. We see with ULA they transport a lot of their stages by train, I believe, because they have a certain size that they can fit on an actual train. We got well, actually, no, they use rocket ship. Sorry, they do transport using a boat. So we see different rocket companies use different transportation methods, but SpaceX for Falcon 9 is able to use large semi trucks to transport these. To and from their Hawthorne facility where they build the Falcon 9s to McGregor, where they actually they test the different stages, and then all the way to the Cape or Vandenberg whenever they go to launch these. So yeah, they transport them usually by semi.
Yeah, but it is fairly rare that they transport boosters between coasts. They have a fleet of boosters for Vandenberg and they have a fleet of boosters for the Cape. And of course, they every now and then will shuffle a booster around, especially like Cody was saying, if it's for an expendable launch. Else, um, uh, else they don't want to transport them more than they absolutely have to.
Right. Yeah. It's probably not a great idea to take a big expensive booster and be constantly driving it around the U.S. It probably adds some cost to operations there. It's better to just reuse a booster that's at the same coast and keep a fleet at one and keep a fleet at the other launch site. So yeah.
Yeah, and we've actually even heard a couple stories of times when the transportation of Falcon first stage has been um, somewhat problematic. I think in Berger's brand new book, Reentry, he told a story of when on the first Falcon 9 booster, when they were transporting it from McGregor to the Cape, they hit a bridge or something like that. And then there was another incident like that a couple, I don't know, maybe it was a year or two ago, when I believe it was a booster that was for a NASA crew mission, hit a bridge and they had to do a few replacements and whatnot. So,
Oh,
with
boosters
that,
in
I
there.
saw that bridge.
Boosters
Yeah.
being lifted again.
that's what we want to see. Seems like they had a few problems initially with this booster lift, but looking good now. So as usual, if you guys haven't seen this process before, what we'll see is SpaceX will pick up the booster probably a little bit more than they have now, and then they'll start the rotation over to set it down on that orbital launch mount. There's another cool view. Alex in the back channel saying B1077 for Crew 5 is what I was talking about, and the impact scratch is still there, which is kind of funny. And we did just get a post on X from SpaceX saying that the reason why they're standing down from tonight's mission is because of weather. So unfortunately, even though the weather looks good on the 45th side, it seems like the recovery weather conditions were not good.
Yeah, and like I was saying, the forecast for tomorrow, it goes from today's low to moderate to a low risk. So hopefully, with that weather improving, we will get a Falcon 9 launch tomorrow. But right now, we've got a booster in the air, which is so cool to see.
Yeah. Again, a booster in the air 9 days after this pad launched IFT-5 and caught B-12. That is insane.
Mm-hmm. I went down there for Flight 5. It was the first ever rocket launch I saw, and it was incredible seeing that in person, seeing the booster get caught there. It was a very surreal moment in my life that I won't forget ever. I mean, just seeing that thing get caught, amazing.
I suspect you've ruined all other rocket launches now by having that be your first launch, but
Yeah, like I feel like working my way up to like, oh, if I watch like a Starlink in person, and then maybe like an RTLS crew launch, and then working my way up to a Starship launch would have been better. But from now on, all other launches are going to be boring. I'm so disappointed. Well, not boring, but
I will say my first ever launch I saw up close in person was Crew Dragon in flight abort. And that was an exciting launch. And even still, every launch is special. Every mission, it has its own special thing, whether it's the time of day, the light, anything like that. Even the sound, depending on the distance you are, smaller rockets can be louder. They have a different characteristic to the engines. Like there's so much that makes every launch special. But I will say, it is buggy out here in the field, so I will be leaving you all to cover this booster lift.
yeah, well, Dee, thank you very much for being on and dealing with those mosquitoes, and thank you to Max as well. We will see you guys for tomorrow's attempt.
See you tomorrow.
And replacing Dee, we have the one, the only, at NASA Spaceflight official, the shuttle lover himself, Chris B. Chris, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thank goodness there's only one of me. I don't think anyone could deal with more than one of me. Yeah, I thought I'd pop in because it's Starbase and it's Booster 13. How many days has it been since they caught Booster 12? Is it 9?
9.
9 days. So, as you may have guessed, I do know a fair few people involved in programs such as NASA and HLS and things like that. And I was always told that one of the big objectives for this year was fast turnaround cadence. That's related to HLS because they need to have lots of launches of Starship for things like refueling or refilling, as I like to call it. Well, I think they're kind of proving the point. right now, we're seeing the Orbital Launch Mount in a good condition after not just a launch, but also the catch. And let's face it, the engines are firing during a catch, so that's probably potentially more damage to the Orbital Launch Mount if you're considering the potential issues they could have with such a thing. And yet, look what's happening. 9 days. We've got booster 13 going onto the Orbital Launch Mount. The scaffolding is still there, which is interesting. So I don't know if we're going to get a static fire tomorrow or Thursday. It might not take them long to take the scaffolding down. I would suspect the scaffolding will come down if they are going to go for a static fire test. But either way, this is a real fast turnaround. This is SpaceX Flex, if we can say that, for the turnaround.
I'd call it a
Yeah, I mean, I
SpaceX
think
Flex.
It's like unheard of to have this level of cadence in any program really except for Falcon, let alone for after 5 flights and having this all be built out in the middle of the desert or in the middle of a swamp, whatever you want to call that biome. It's just crazy how quickly they've gotten to this point.
Yeah, apparently I'm quiet. It's either that or my voice. I did go to the round ball this evening, UK time, and I may have kind of hurt my voice a little bit with the fact that we keep winning games. So that's happy, Chris. I don't know if Carson's wants to turn me up because that sounds wrong, doesn't it? Because I also sounding wrong. I never change my knobs, so I'm always on the same settings. So there we go. A bit of blue for the older people there. The Raptors, by the way. This would be interesting. If we can get some zoomies, we have cameras such as potentially some cameras that may be able to zoom right in on the engines. They will be wearing booties, but we might get some numbers. I know people are always fascinated by the engine numbers of the Raptors that are on the boosters, so any potential close-up enhances, as we call it, will be great.
Yeah, because we saw engine 314, right? And the special pie on it. It'd be cool to see another little something for a special number on there.
That's right, 314. And this is also quite interesting because we did see some BQD tests, and ironically, that is something they tend to do when they hook up the booster for at least cryoproofing. Now, they don't need to do cryoproofing. They did that at masses. This is the fascinating thing about the flows now with boosters, is the flow at the Orbital Launch Mount is either spin prime, pre-burner, don't even do pre-burners anymore. They do spin prime or they do static fire test. So really, when you get into this kind of configuration, you can start looking out for an overpressure notice, which I'm sure Mary will make us aware of if there is going to be one. And that will be basically the notice to say we're going to go for a static fire attempt. And that's how you know, because the overpressure notice is in case of an anomaly where it could at least rattle windows in Boca Chica Village, and that's not something they want to do. It hasn't happened back during at least the booster campaign, test campaigns, but they have previously had some runs where was it SN? Chat, remind me, which one was the one that went boom quite dramatically? SN5? No, it wasn't SN5. SN5 launched.
SN4?
Yes, that'll be it. There we go. So that was the one where you could see the power that can be produced from a RUD at the pad and how it could affect from a large distance as well. So this is going to be interesting to see. The drone is up as well. The drone, I can just see the lights of it there. It's going to be interesting to see how fast they're going to move to a static fire test.
Yeah, because they have, obviously there was today's closure for the rollout of B13. There's another closure tonight from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. local, which was probably, we think, was just a backup opportunity for them to roll boosters. So we're not expecting anything to happen there. But then they already have testing tomorrow from 6 p.m. to midnight. And then the day after, the next 2 days after, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it's very likely, I think, that at least one of these will be for spin prime and another could very well be for static fire.
Yeah, the beauty of these tests is they could go for a static fire test and abort and then just do a spin prime anyway. So we're going to get some form of testing. I'm just fascinated by the potential other addition to reducing the processing flow, as we call it, or the pad flow in this case, is if they leave the booster out there for launch. If this rollout was for launch and they do not roll it back to the production site like they usually do after a static fire test, then game on. because Ship 31's already started fired. It's pretty much looking like its TPS work has been completed. We could literally have the booster out there for launch, waiting for its hot staging ring, and Ship 31 to turn up, and then the SpaceX can put the tweet out saying, "We are ready to go." And then they can't really say pending regulatory approval because they've got it. They can say things like pending local authority approval, such as the blast danger area clearance areas and things like that. They could really flex on this and say, look, literally just a few weeks after we've launched, we're ready to go again. And I wouldn't blame SpaceX for going for that, because they want to prove a point that when they're not held back by regulatory approval, they can really push the cadence.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had kind of forgotten that Ship 31 did its testing ahead of Flight 5.
Yep.
The one thing that will be somewhat interesting to watch for, though, is, right, we did see that there were still some tile problems on Ship 30 during its re-entry, where it looked like one of those forward flaps was, still got a little burny, if you will, burning through that TPS on the hinge. So it'll be interesting to see if they decide to do more work on the hinge, or if they decide, no, we're good enough for now since Block 2 of Starship will fix these problems, and I don't know, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think you've got it there, because I can't remember if it was Elon. I think it was Elon that said a note about how the improvements to the TPS had improved the flaps for the burn through. I can't remember where I saw it, but I'm sure it was Elon that said it. Chat, back me up. There's enough people in this community in chat who will be able to know this immediately. I do believe that there was a positive reflection on how the flaps did this time, although, as Trevor correctly noted, there certainly was burn through. And I do think that they're going to accept it with V1 and hope to mitigate it with V2, as you correctly suggested. So I don't expect any kind of changes for Ship 31. I would expect them to say, well, look, we can get the data we need, and then on the flap side, such as the burn through, we'll find out what we've done with the mitigation on V2 ships, which is 33 onwards.
Yeah, and for those who are wondering what the mitigation is, by the way, they're literally just moving the flaps back a little bit, so they won't be, perfectly 180 degrees apart. It'll be a little under 180 degrees. So that way, those hinges are not in the plasma stream for those forward flaps. And my guess is why this is a problem for the forward flaps, but not the aft flaps, is because, right, the nose cone obviously is a bit smaller of a diameter. So you probably have a bit less of a bow shock if pushing that plasma away, if I had to make a total shot in the dark. But I don't know. We'll have to see, but SpaceX does have those mitigations in place.
I can just quickly answer a question. Sorry, I knew I was going to interrupt somebody.
Go for it.
Just a quick question in chat asking why I said 33 and not 32. We do not expect 32 to fly. It's in the rocket garden. We fully expect it to be scrapped. So they're going to go from the Flight 5 configuration, which was with Ship 30, this Flight 6 with Ship 31, and then move on to the V2, starting with Ship 33. That is what we fully expect.
Yeah, good note there. So this will be the last V1 flight.
Yes, it will, and that's the interesting thing, because that'd be a nice way to end the year and start 2025 afresh with the configuration and potentially any changes to the FAA side, the documentation side with the V2 configuration, if that is even needed. I'm guessing it might be needed, but it might not. Any mitigation in the documentation would allow them over the holidays to get that done. So that kind of plays in that they want to finish off 2024 strongly with Flight 6. And I'd class that as a very good year, because they've obviously found lots of successes, not least catching the booster. And then going to 2025, and it should be game on 2025. They have to really sort of like push the cadence, as they're proving right now with the preparations. They have to push the cadence, because it does come down to what I was saying earlier. The biggest contract, if you think about it, is HLS right now. They've got their Starlink launches they want to cater for with Starship, which makes a lot of sense from their own internal commercial prospects. But HLS is a massive contract. And they have competition with Blue. Let's face it, they can't dawdle on this. They have Blue Origin breathing down their necks pretty much, saying, we've got a HLS as well. And I'm sure Elon is very motivated by that. I'm sure SpaceX is as well. So they need to prove that they're refilling capability, which is a big part of their HLS contract. They need to prove to fulfill their HLS objectives involves a high launch cadence. So that is probably a big 2025 goal, along with potentially the refilling tests themselves.
Yeah, I do think that's a really important point that you bring up of what their 2025 goals are. Obviously, higher launch cadence, reusing a booster, and catching a ship and making more progress on propellant transfer. I think, and probably deploying Starlink satellites. I think that's all stuff we're likely going to see next year.
Yep.
But with that, it is kind of cool to note that this is actually not the only booster SpaceX is doing things with right now. Because just to show how insane this company is, we had a launch attempt from the Cape, a booster lift at Starbase, and then they're also testing a Falcon stage that's B1090 at McGregor. So there's just so much going on at this company. I'm not sure if do either of you know what this booster is going to be used on? That's probably a question for Alex, but
Yeah, I'm not too sure. We do know this is 1090, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, next spaceflight does not have any entries for B1090. And Gage is saying B13 seems to be going down. It looks like it may be on its way to the OLM. Awesome. With that, let's go to some more of your guys' questions, and as always, if you have any, at NASASpaceflight in chat, and we will do our best to answer them. Let's see. Dougal is wondering, will they eventually install stubby chopsticks on the first tower? Cody, that is what we are expecting, correct?
I'm sorry, but I'm unaware of stubby chopsticks. I only know of stubby nozzles. So I'll hand this over to Chris, who I believe probably knows a little bit more about the stubby chopsticks.
Yes, I do. First of all, I would just like to clarify that stubby nozzles are great. Less material on your nozzle is a good thing. I know it's performance and what have you, but I do like the look of stubby. It looks great.
Okay, that's wild. That's crazy, because that's the one downside of the stubby nozzle for me.
Well, the good news is stubby chopsticks is also a good thing, because the reason for stubby I've been mumbling my words, put my dentures back in, hang on. The reason for stubby chopsticks is because, and this is a true story, the chopsticks on Tower 1, as we see them now, the ones which caught the booster, are actually too long. They worked out they're too long. And that's why the 39A at KSC chopsticks are shorter, because of that finding. And that's why the chopsticks for the second tower at Starbase are also shorter, like the KSC ones, which would preclude the fact that they probably will go for shorter chopsticks on Tower 1. Because, and let's face it, the shorter the chopsticks, the less master is, and that's when they try and catch the booster. It's less issues of bouncing around, and the issues they could have had with the catch. It was one of my big concerns, I must admit, with Flight 5. With the catch, I was thinking, well, I do have these concerns about the extra long chopsticks, which is more mass, and that's why they were doing a slap test with B14.1, because they wanted to see how fast they could move those sticks and also slow them down with all that mass. So that worked out quite well, and that bodes very well for the stubby chopsticks, shall we call them, on Tower 2 and also at KSC. I really do think, because they can make these things at Roberts Road in no time, I think they will use the modification period on Tower 1, which is coming. Elon said that on the Tim Dodd interview, on the pad tour of Tim Dodd Everyday Astronauts video. Elon did say that when Tower 2 is in action, they will then modify Tower 1. So that is where I think we'll get the flame trench, the new orbital launch mount, and the same chopsticks as Tower 2.
Yeah, and for those who are kind of curious about the math, it actually is hugely advantageous to have them be a bit shorter. Because, right, basically what we have with these chopsticks is a stick pivoting around the edge of the stick. So the moment of inertia is 1/3 ml squared, if I remember correctly, where L
Yep.
is the length. So by cutting the chopsticks in half, you actually have about a quarter of the moment of inertia. And that means you have a lot less acceleration or angular acceleration to have to deal with. So you'll be able to move them faster, and you'll be able to control them better and not kind of have like sway motion that we see on these V1 chopsticks.
Yeah, I always appreciate the maths, Trevor.
The singular math, you mean?
It's actually a Nightbot command. You put math in as a command, it goes, are you missing an S on the end of that?
We are not missing the S.
No.
I agree. I agree, Trevor. It doesn't make any sense at all, does it? Let's face it. I mean, we're stuck in our ways. Let's face it. The interesting thing about this procedure right now is it can take quite a while. For obvious reasons, they want to line it up correctly. They want to make sure that everything is aligned to the point that when they actually lower it for installation, that it lines up with the BQD. Because that's another thing you'll see later on is the quick disconnect that you see in the HUD on the left-hand side of this view right now will actually pop out, it'll open out, and it'll attach to the booster itself. And that is, boys and girls, how they actually fuel the rocket, and also the booster at least, and also how they have electrical connections. It's exactly the same as the tail service mast on the shuttle pad. I mentioned shuttle, there you go, which is also a same procedure they use for SLS. It is all through that connection at the bottom, and that provides electrical, communication, and even the fueling. It does everything. They are so important on the pads.
Yeah. No kidding. And it is also somewhat, I think, important to bring up that, right, this pad infrastructure was built all the way back with like the B4S20 stack. So it's certainly to be expected a little bit that they've come up with a lot of things to improve, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of those improvements on pad B and tower B. So, I mean, from what we've seen, it seems like that pad will be totally different.
Certainly, it's gonna be square. That's one thing. We got some square components being put out there instead of the more circular OLM we have here.
Yeah, I must admit, I still can't get my head around it. Maybe I'm just so ingrained with the current design of the Orbital Launch Mount, and as it was going to be at 39A as well. They're going to scrap a very large piece of structure, a very heavy piece of structure at KSC, because they've adopted a different plan now. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it all works. I'm sure the bright people at SpaceX, who know more than any of us, including chat, bless your chat, but I'm sure they agree, they know what they're talking about and they know what they're doing. I just find it fascinating that this design has worked. They have got 5 flights. They've got an incremental increase in what they've achieved with the flights. It's a heck of a test program, if you think about it. This is the world's largest, most powerful rocket ever by a factor of 2, if you're talking about power. It's incredible that they've not destroyed the tower. They've not destroyed the tank farm. It's something that could have easily done that, especially on Flight 1. So they have really pushed the boundaries and really pushed the design of this, the profile, the launch profile of this vehicle, and achieved all these goals. People sound like we're just throwing praise on SpaceX. And I would say, well, yes, I am, because the facts are right in front of you. They have achieved so much with this already after 5 flights. What's it going to be like after 20, after 30, after 40? It's going to be incredible to watch.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's see, some support. Captain Q is wondering, do we still expect to see a 35 Raptor booster at some point? We don't know. Is that a good way of putting it, Chris?
Yeah, because I'm sure that was suggested before Raptor 3. And I'm wondering if Raptor 3 might be able to cater for it in the current configuration of 33. I do think we're going to see the 9 engines on the ship. I think that's something that Elon really wants, and I think something that makes sense because there is space for it. And why not utilize that with 6 RVACs and 3 sea levels, especially with the long duration and burns they're going to be planning for these destinations to the moon and Mars. I mean, you can take a lot of power from that once you've utilized the boost to get it up there to then do the work in space. Why would they need a few more engines and booster? I'm not too sure. Would Raptor 3's increased power that we've seen already been tested at McGregor cater for everything they need? I don't know. The booster is probably more of a question than the ship, I would say.
Yeah, though the one interesting piece of evidence that we do have for a 35 engine booster, which to be clear, we have not seen a thrust puck or anything that supports 35 engines so far. But remember the Elon all hands meeting earlier this year, what I think it must have been after Flight 3, when he was talking about the future iterations of Starship with Starship 2 and Starship 3. If you take the Raptor 3 thrust number, which we're expecting to be on booster version 2, and you multiply, you take the amount of thrust that Elon said the booster will have and divide that by the thrust per engine of Raptor 3, you get 35, not 33, which is somewhat interesting and suggests that there still is a chance of a 35 engine booster, and I actually think it's pretty likely at this point. They seem to really want as many engines as they can on future boosters. And as Ryan is mentioning in the back channel, the tiered environmental assessment for Boca and the EIS for 39A also mentioned 35 engines on the first stage.
Yeah, but also mentioned catch towers. Do they really want to catch towers? That's a heck of a lot of infrastructure just for a separate catch tower. I really like the idea of the actual launch site, the actual launch tower it launched from, catching it as we saw in Flight 5. I'm stuck in my ways. I do like that. I would rather see a second launch tower than a separate catch tower. That's just me. I'm not in charge of these decisions, but that's my personal preference.
Yeah. Alex is saying it does not mention catch towers. There is only mention of a catch tower for 39A. That sounds like what you said, but
Alex likes doing that. He likes, but Chris, yeah, I was talking about the EIS for 39A.
Yeah. Then Apocalypse Cow, a very regular supporter of ours, gifted 5 Red Team memberships. If you got one of those, make sure you thank them. Thank you, Apocalypse Cow. And then Skip with the super chat saying, "Math without an S is just stubby maths." I don't accept this. Oh my gosh! And then Kevin Michael Reed saying, "When stubby Raptor? Never."
I'm not gonna lie, I almost said that, and I almost threw open my mouth a little bit when I thought of that. It's just a horrible thought.
Are we talking about Raptor on the booster or Raptor on the ship? Because it doesn't make any sense Raptor on the booster being a stubby. But on the ship...
No.
What? Why?
Chris, don't do this.
Why though?
You don't need it. I mean, if ship is fully reusable, you don't need to have a separate configuration for less performance.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that was a bad question from Kevin Michael Reed, in my opinion.
For a second, I completely forgot it was from Kevin Michael Reed, and I was thinking, what's Trevor doing saying someone's just sent a really bad question? I'm like, don't do that. That's one way to lose the community.
No, we love Kevin, so we have to give him crap. Let's see some more Starbase questions as we see it looks like booster is most of the way down at this point. This is when, as Chris was mentioning earlier, this process starts to slow down a little as they have to do work or make sure it's aligned on all 20 of those hold down clamps. So
Yeah, I think
Spare-
we'll take a couple of more questions and then we'll call that a commentary stream. Remember, these views will not stop. We do not turn off the views. We will be moving back to Starbase Live. I think he might auto send people to Starbase Live. I don't know. He might send them to Spacecast Live. Either ways, you know where Starbase Live is. I'm sure most of you already do. That's where the views continue 24/7, regardless if we're talking or not. And that's when we'll switch over. But we'll take a few more questions and then call that a commentary stream part at least.
Yeah, and again, if you have any good ones, tag us at NASASpaceflight. Let's see. Okay, a lot of the questions that I have in the queue are from the Falcon section of the stream. We will answer those tomorrow during tomorrow's stream of Falcon. I will focus on Starship for now, but Tim Simmons with the super chat saying, may we please have a 12-inch NSF patch as the centerpiece of the patch collection. The family will pay the premium, Peter Book asked. I get a shirt. The shirts have a big patch on them.
Yeah, you could get the shirt and then just basically starch it so it's nice and firm, and then that's a massive patch. Literally, it really is. I've seen the t-shirts; they are massive patch versions. I can leak a little bit because I love to leak. I'm notorious for leaking, and say that the work on the Flight 6 patch is progressing well. Now, it's a long process to get from that to patches in a big box in a warehouse where they get shipped out. So I don't know if the current potential of a November launch sticks. That might be a pre-order one. We were quite lucky with Flight 5 that the regulatory approval process took so long that we managed to get to the point where we had the big box in the warehouse in Texas, to the point where we could ship it straight away as soon as people started ordering it. We released it. So to say that we will fully expect to have a Flight 6 patch for you to show you by the time this one gets to launch, if it's launched in November, which is quite early. So that's in work. The process has started. I have seen the initial designs. I'm saying nothing because I'll get in so much trouble. It's awesome. Again, Pauline is a master at these things.
Yeah, I think we can safely get away with leaking that it is Starship related.
Yeah, I can confirm that, Trevor. Yes, it is definitely Starship related. Yes. Can you imagine we just stuck a Falcon 9 on there for no reason whatsoever?
Can the patch be Ares 1 related?
No, it can't. No, we don't do silly patches for silly rockets.
Aw, man.
Please don't tell me you're an Ares 1 fan.
I get it. I know why it's bad. But despite all of this, despite it all, I am indeed an Ares 1 fan. I'm sorry.
I will just say one thing to you, Cody, and that is, I remember the memo written in all caps from the Orion team to the Ares team saying, please stop hindering our design process because Ares couldn't even lift a boilerplate Orion. That's how bad Ares was. There we go. Continue.
Man.
So the one question that I've seen quite a bit in chat that I think we should talk about is what we expect from Flight 6's flight profile, right? We know from the FAA documentation that SpaceX is permitted to do basically the same flight profile as Flight 5, except for with, small modifications that SpaceX has been approved for in the past. So, Chris, do you think we'll see SpaceX do like an in-space Raptor ignition test, or what do you think the main objective of this next flight will be?
My gut says they could go for a mirror. That to me, that would make sense to do a mirror flight. It's almost like a validation flight because there's so many things are achieved, especially with the booster catch. They want to mirror that, but that's not very SpaceXy, is it? It's not very Elon-y. They're always pushing. They're always looking for something else. So the in-space burn is probably the biggest candidate for something they'll do different. A lot of people are saying things like, will they go for the ship catch? I think it's too soon for that. Way too soon. And they probably have to learn things that they could do on Flight 6, such as if they catch it, maybe speed up the process of getting it back onto the Orbital Launch Mount where the chopsticks release it and then get back up the tower to be in catch position for a pretend catch of ship. That's something that's been quite a long process with Flight 5. Fair enough, understandably. They caught the booster, that was the big thing. But you might see things like that. But the actual flight profile itself, the only thing I could think of is what you suggested, the in-space burn.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do, because I agree it's very much not the SpaceX way to do a launch without trying to achieve more. Like, the only time I think we've really seen that is what, SN5 and SN6.
Yeah.
Those hops were essentially the same despite the first one being successful.
Ironically, the original plan was SN5, SN6, and still do some more after that. It was after SN6 that they said, let's call it a day. We're happy with these two flights, these two hops, I should say. They're 150 meters, they weren't exactly flights. And move on to the full ship testing. Because remember, SN5 and SN6 were literally just like tankage with a big 20-ton top hat, shall we say. It was like a steel cube. It was quite hilarious. They decided then go on to the high altitude tests straight after that. So it was a very rare example of SpaceX doing a mirror test between SN5 and SN6, and I don't think we've really seen that since, because we saw with the high altitude tests that they didn't get the successful land until later on. So that's why they kept on trying with the same idea.
Yeah. That's true. And Alex in the back channel is saying, is everyone forgetting that hitting a fast turnaround would already be the quote new thing?
True.
Yeah, but
True, but
you're not
is it
wrong.
flight profile? Yeah, this is the thing. Such as the chopsticks releasing a caught booster faster than it did with a Flight 5. That would be a difference as well. That'd be an improvement, but it's not flight profile, is it? It's a flight profile. In space burns. It's too soon for Starlinks, I think.
Yeah, way too soon.
Pop a few Starlinks out. That'd be quite hilarious. But I think maybe we'll see some payload bay testing. Maybe the slot. We haven't heard much about the slot since, have we?
But version 2 of ship has a totally different
Yeah.
payload phase, so they're like testing nothing.
Yeah.
I feel like if they wanted to test the in space burn, instead of, I really don't think they're going to go full orbital with version 1. What they could do is perhaps burn retrograde and actually target an area sooner than it would have, gone to through re-entry. So kind of changing the re-entry profile by burning your engines in space a little bit. So changing where you're going to land is kind of what my thinking is if they're going to do any sort of in space burn, because having the potential of entering orbit could cause a ton of issues, but then again also re-entering short could have a lot of issues. So
how about landing the ship off the coast of New York on a barge and calling it the first point-to-point test?
Oh my gosh,
I like your
Point-to-point
style, Chris.
video coming soon.
Yeah, I know. I was going to mention it. I was going to say, we've got a video coming soon, an article as well. And I wrote the article and I was like, writing this all happy and giddy, going, point to point, my time to shine. And the more research I did, the more depressed I got. The fact that there's so many challenges, I was thinking, this is never going to happen, really, is it? Oh my God, what do I do now? So yeah, it's probably quite objective, because you can probably see my smile turned upside down, into a frown, as deeper I get into this with the challenges. But it's still a very interesting thing to talk about, because from the point it was presented, the point it is now, which is still officially a plan, it's even on the SpaceX website to this day as a plan, is viable to talk about. You never know. SpaceX, they're not immune from finding ways around challenges.
Yeah. The one other big thing that I do think SpaceX could try doing is, right, Elon said on X that they inspected B12 on the pad right after catch, and that, right, the engines had a bit of I don't know, they were a bit warped, he said, but aside from that, the booster was in like pretty good shape. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them, try to have this booster be in a bit better of shape for a potential reflight. Like, keep in mind, the second Falcon 9 that landed was eventually reflown. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities that SpaceX wants to start going for a reflight of booster for early next year.
It's funny you should mention that, Trevor, because I did get a very expansive answer from Elon Musk when I actually asked him. Well, I didn't ask him. I just basically replied to the post-launch photograph that he posted. I didn't ask him a question. I was just saying it would be interesting to see a good data point to refire these engines at McGregor. And I'm going to try and read it out word for word. But Elon said, 100. So that's a yes in Elon talk. That means we could probably expect some of the firings. We'll never know which ones are which. Let's face it, we don't get that kind of information, but we do watch the test firings. But some of those future test firings of Raptors at McGregor could very well be some of Booster 12's engines. And that's going to be fascinating because the data they'll get from flight-flown engines, I mean, that is massive. They'll get so much data for the purpose of knowing how to do reusability. So I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. And in the back channel, Ryan is saying that OLM stabilizer pins engaged, final adjustments to line up, all 21 quick disconnects are underway. So that's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Let's see. Azad the King is wondering, when will Ship 31 heat shield work be finished? I think we're expecting that to be done very soon, correct?
Yeah, if you watch our latest videos, such as Starbase updating and videos, the dailies, we call them dailies, but they tend to be like a couple of days worth of content together, you will see footage and photographs involved in from Mary and Jack at Starbase, including views of Ship 31. If you're a member, Capcom and above, or L2 especially, you'll get to see all the photographs taken every single day from Mary and Jack in a complete dump of photographs. And I know for a fact, because I'm the one who uploads them, that there's a lot of Ship 31. Ship 31 looks in a pretty good state, I can tell you, without leaking anything. It's obvious. It's in a very good shape, and that's why I'm quite excited about all of this, because there is no kind of like, oh, well, we might be waiting another month for Ship 31 yet. There's none of that. It looks like it's in pretty close configuration. I'm waiting for maybe potentially Ryan or Alex in the back room telling me, oh no, it's still quite a lot of work to do. To me, to my eyes, it looks like it's pretty ready to go. So we could really be getting excited about this, because if Ship 31 rolls next, that might mean that the booster is staying at the pad. To me, I think if we're going to see a rollback of Booster 13, so many vehicles, I lose track very easily, especially with my brain. If we don't see a rollback of Booster 13, we see a roll out of Ship 31, we might have a full stack configuration before long.
Yeah. Alex is saying could be a few weeks until it's ready, but not a lot of weeks. So
that works.
Yeah. And then lastly, B is wondering, any updates with Booster 12? Have we seen any engines leave? I have not heard of any engines from B12 confirmed being headed toward McGregor, but as Chris was mentioning earlier, we do have Elon confirming that will be the case.
Yeah. Again, the fun thing in the early days is the Raptor van would turn up. It was quite an open vehicle, and Starbase production site was less expansive as it is today. And you could basically watch the engines arrive and depart and what have you. Now it's in a separate place. You'd have to spot the van, and we wouldn't want someone like Mary stuck out there all day waiting for a van to roll past her just to notice if there was any Raptors on board. You won't be able to see them. So it's very hard to know that. We do have a McGregor crew, so that might be an indication if one of the McGregor guys sees the Raptor van arriving and maybe offloading. We might be lucky with a flyover photograph, you never know. So there's every potential we might get to know about that, but otherwise it's going to be a case of just trusting what the SpaceX process is, and they're going to refire some of these engines on the test stands at McGregor.
Yeah. Very cool. Let's see. Alex in the back channel said, speaking of Raptors, ... He's not finished this thought yet. So I'm going to pressure Alex into finishing this thought by mentioning that he has some thought about Raptors that we all eagerly await. So
he's not even typing.
Alex? Yeah, what are you doing, Alex?
How have we got a Raptor video? We might have a Raptor video coming. I'm sure it's a reference to a video that's upcoming.
Oh yeah,
and Kevin Michael Reed's typing as well, so it's definitely a video. Yeah, we have a Raptor video incoming.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah. But speaking of Raptors, we also have some Raptor merch. Pushing the limits of physics on shop.nasaspaceflight.com, you can check out all of the awesome merch that Pauline designed. There's one for Raptor, there's one for Merlin, which unfortunately we didn't see any Merlins fired today. There's one for the shuttle huggers, not that any of them are on stream right now.
What?
There's one for the BE4, so go check those out. We have the holiday merch as well. Lots of stuff on shop.nasaspaceflight.com. But with that, I think that's going to do it for us today. Cody, thank you very much for being on stream for Falcon and then for Booster Lift.
As always, I'm so happy to be here and share my passion with everyone else. I always love these commentary streams, and I hope to be back for the next one whenever I'm in between my classes and studying. So thank you for having me.
Of course. And then Chris Bergen himself joined us for the Booster Lift. Chris, thank you.
You two make me feel so old. Talking about classes and school and what have you. The last time I was at school, I think Duran Duran were doing very well in the charts, and I've got a funny feeling Trevor and Cody might even not know who they are. Oh no! But either way, the people in chat will understand the reference. But yeah, thank you for having me.
What did you say?
Duran Duran.
I've heard of it. I've heard of.
I have no idea.
Oh,
I think
Simon Le Bon, Hungry Like a Wolf. Help me out, chat. I've got kids with me.
I'm sorry.
They were a massive band in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, no idea. I just know Taylor Swift. Anyway, with that disappointing news for Chris and others, thank you everyone for joining. We'll be back tomorrow for the Blue Origin New Shepard launch. Members, pay attention to that. And then, of course, we'll be back streaming the Starlink Group 661, which got delayed from today. And in the background, we had Carson operating today's stream, and Kevin and Jay and Dee and Max all helping out in other ways. So thank you to all those people. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. Off.
It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage!
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes! You good? We don't need any more of these.